This is a relay project.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
We welcome you to this January 18th edition of Real Talk on this Wednesday. Jesperson and Hicks with you. In just a quick second, Dr. Kristopher Wells will join us, then Dr. Sylvain Charlebois and the Honorable Randy Boissonnault rounding out today's roster. Hell of a show. Looking forward to it. You know, we were planning on leading this morning, so to speak, with inflation and food costs, grocery costs in Canada. We'll go to the food professor, one of the more prominent voices in Canada, Dr. Charlebois, in about 10 minutes. But things change in the news cycle. Things change when you do a talk show. And, of course, you've likely heard by now about what happened last night at a Philadelphia Flyers game. Before the Philadelphia Flyers game, it was Pride Night in the city of Philadelphia, and the Flyers took to warm-ups with Pride-themed hockey sweaters to be auctioned off after the game for charity. There was one notable omission during that pregame skate. Flyers all-star defenseman Ivan Provorov, who refused to don the sweater, citing his religious beliefs. He sat out the warm-up. He played in the game. That was the decision of Flyers coach John Tortorella. Here's what Ivan Provorov told reporters after he missed the skate.
Everybody, I respect everybody's choices. My choice is to stay true to myself and my religion. That's all I'm going to say. Like I said, that's all I'm going to comment on that. If you have any hockey questions, I would answer those.
Can you just clarify Can you clarify your religion?
Russian Orthodox.
So with the game tonight, Ivan, obviously Kevin Hayes.
All right, so there he is, citing his religious beliefs. He went on to say that he respects everybody. He respects everybody's choices. Choice is always an interesting word in the context of this conversation, isn't it? Now, there are different opinions on what should have been done here. I've seen people suggest that Ivan Provorov should have been sat. As a matter of fact, I believe that the Philadelphia Flyers should have sat Ivan Provorov. His coach, John Tortorella, says, no fucking way. A lot of people believe that the NHLPA would probably take issue with, for example, Ivan Provorov getting suspended. I've seen suggestions this morning that the National Hockey League should fine the Philadelphia Flyers. But there was one opinion in particular brought to my attention by a real talker by the name of Michael, in fact, a great friend of this show who's got a lot of experience when it comes to equity. He wants to talk about diversity, wants to talk about inclusion in hockey. Of course, you've heard of Pride Tape. It was co-founded by our guest this morning, Dr. Kristopher Wells, who's been kind enough to join us. Dr. Wells, welcome to the show. I got to be honest, when I saw your message saying that you don't want to see anybody forced to participate in Pride, it made me pause and think that this isn't necessarily a black and white issue, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we're seeing is really an evolution of years of work within society and the NHL to the point that we have pride jerseys and we're talking about this issue. When we started Pride Tape and took it to the Edmonton Oilers, the team captain, Andrew Ferentz at the time, he took the tape into the room and he told the guys what the tape meant, and he asked them to participate. It wasn't mandatory, and not all of the players used that. And he gave us a good piece of advice and said, the locker room is like a workplace. You're going to have many different people with many different backgrounds and many different ideas. And the strength of Pride Tape has always been that, it's allies stepping forward and signaling their support.
Did it feel like a gut punch nonetheless last night? What was your reaction when you first heard the story?
Yeah, absolutely. It's always I'd say it's disappointing, but not surprising. Right from the get-go, we've experienced players who didn't want to participate, didn't support sort of the message, but now that went from only a few people using Pride Tape, for example, on a team to now Pride Team is used by every team in the NHL and across the world as that badge of inclusivity. And I take it back to my experience as a classroom teacher, and when we put up a safe space sticker in our classroom, we need to stand behind it because we don't want that young person walking into that room and questioning if this if it's really going to be a safe space.
So what do you think would be an appropriate response, in your opinion, from the Philadelphia Flyers, who were quick to issue a statement? Let me point out that a couple of Ivan Provorov's teammates established a wonderful charity last night that's going to welcome LGBTQ+ hockey fans to games for 20 home games to come. The players are paying for those tickets. There were good news things that were happening that were all overshadowed by this. Obviously a disaster for the Flyers from a public relations standpoint. What would you expect or like to see from the Flyers? What would you expect or like to see from the National Hockey League this morning?
Yeah, I think it could have been handled differently. I didn't necessarily agree with the coach's comments about, that, well, we have to, respect the player and their decision. I think, you can make a decision, but sometimes, there are consequences for that decision. I think what probably should have happened is they should have sat him out and not played the game at all, right? Not be able to just skip the warmups and then play the game. Again, I would have had a much a different response if it was the team that elected not to hold a Pride Night, as we've seen in the past, or not to wear the jerseys. I think inevitably what we're going to see is right now the Pride jerseys are pregame, is that they'll be used in a game. We're starting to see teams use all kinds of different jerseys now. So even the NHL has evolved over the years.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting. Are you familiar with John Tortorella's background with regards to social issues and players? And, his son is an Army Ranger, right? And John Tortorella, a short time ago, relatively speaking, told reporters that if any of his players were to kneel during a national anthem, he'd sit them for the game. He'd have no problem with it. So I guess if it's Black Lives Matter, it's something that he's willing to risk the Flyers' chances of winning on, but maybe not Pride. I see some inconsistency there. I can't be the only one.
Yeah, I think if Provorov came out with homophobic or transphobic, comments or statements, we'd be dealing with a different issue, or said something on the ice, that was inappropriate. But he just chose not to participate in wearing the jersey. I think we have to be careful that, we can't force people to be inclusive. In fact, I go back to that old quote from Maya Angelou, who says, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I'd much rather know that somebody didn't support me, didn't support my community, right to my face, rather than wonder whether they were an ally or not.
Yeah. So, if this is all, if sport is going to be all about winning, I guess I should have expected this, but when I posted last night that I said shame on the Flyers for playing him, I said he can have all the opinions he wants and he can have them from the press box. My mentions are a trash fire, and I know that you're not going to be surprised by that. And a lot of people are asserting that it's the coach's job, it's the player's job to win hockey games. The Philadelphia Flyers' job is to go out there and try to win the Stanley Cup. And a lot of people are talking about the forced speech, and they're talking about social issues and activism and marginalized groups. And one person in particular asked me, why is it always this group? Why is it always these people that are fighting for diversity and inclusion? I'm not sure the person asking the question understands the irony of their statement. But let me ask you this. If we are going to start making exceptions like this, if we're going to allow athletes, team players, to opt out of diversity and inclusion initiatives based on, for example, religious beliefs or other personal convictions, maybe sports teams, maybe organizations, maybe corporations should stay far away from all of this. Maybe we shouldn't have banks supporting Pride. Maybe we shouldn't have hockey teams supporting Black Lives Matter. Maybe we shouldn't have any organizations publicly and outwardly supporting the military when not everybody's thrilled about the idea of war. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, and from our community, part of it is this notion of rainbow washing that happens where, a corporation will put up a rainbow during Pride Week, but what are they actually doing the rest of the year? How are they actually supporting the community? Are they contributing to the community? Are they inviting the community in? Are they changing their policies and their processes? That's really that false allyship, or where you're just putting on appearances to be polite. It reminds me of people who talk a lot about, the goal being tolerance. I don't want to be tolerated. I don't want to be put up with. Tolerance is a power-laden concept. It means, this table is mine and I get to decide whether you have the right to have a seat at it. I'm much rather want to move towards celebrating diversity and inclusion and recognizing that everyone has an inalienable right to be at that table, right? You don't get to decide who's worthy of rights and who's not. So it's a complex issue, and this has become a flashpoint. But I think ultimately, this player has shown their values and their beliefs, and now I think the team has to decide: does that align with our organization? Do we want to keep this player? I think it's no really different than we've seen on a bunch of other issues around sexualized violence or inappropriate, comments we've seen and behaviors from other hockey players that come to light, and teams are cutting them loose and just saying, you know what, you can have those beliefs. And even if you weren't found criminally responsible, we find that, it doesn't align with our values.
Yeah.
Go find another team.
And no pun intended, I'm going to take a flyer here and suggest that Ivan Provorov's not going anywhere. He's a hugely valuable piece of that hockey team, and they pay him a lot of money, close to $10 million a year to do what he does. But it sure was a disappointing development last night. Another person made a point to me, which I agree with. They said that this is just one example. They said we'd probably be shocked if we realized some of the opinions and convictions of a lot of people that we put up on pedestals.
Yeah, well, believe it. We've worked closely with the NHL and teams over the years, and all kinds of players, and we've chosen to celebrate and lift up the allies and those strong voices of inclusion and give them the platform. And we know that, that grows the chorus, and the choir starts to sing louder and more people start joining in. When people like Andrew Ference became the first team captain of any sport in North America to march in a pride parade, he did it here in Edmonton. And he did it because he didn't want it to be about him, but he wanted it to be about showing support for the community. He knew his privilege. He knew the platform that he had, right? And we hope that, other hockey players will see that.
Yeah, he also did it in part because there are people like you working tirelessly behind the scenes to advocate, to develop programs, to bring awareness. We've got a world of respect for you, Dr. Wells, and I'm grateful that you were able to make yourself available on short notice to do the show this morning. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you soon.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you got it. That's Dr. Kristopher Wells, the co-founder of Pride Tape. This feels like a good time to remind you that the Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic is coming up on Saturday, February 4th, and we will have rolls and rolls and rolls of Pride Tape there, just like we did last year, John. Just like we did last year.
I think we'll double the order.
Proud.
Now.
Yeah, I think we might double the order now. Everybody's going to get 2 rolls of Pride Tape in their welcome bag when you show up on Saturday, February 4th, in support of Big Brothers, Big Sisters, brother, uncles and aunts at large, and of course, Kids Sport St. Albert. This through the Canadian Progress Club St. Albert chapter. It's going to be a wonderful day celebrating Canadiana and hockey outside. You can register today, your team of 4 or 5 skaters. You can register to volunteer or even sponsor the tournament. You can find all the details on our website, ryanjesperson.com. Just click on the events link and then click Pond Hockey. It's nice and easy to find that Saturday, February 4th, the second annual Real Talk Pond Hockey Classic. Last year, $50,000 raised for charity. Fantastic stuff. We'll pick up this story on Ivan Provorov and the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll talk about pride and hockey, forced speech, coming up again in about 15 minutes when the federal tourism minister, associate finance minister, the Honorable Randy Boissonnault joins us. Right now, though, we want to move on to the story that was to be our lead, and I'm grateful that Dr. Sylvain Charlebois has hung tight for us. This was obviously an important conversation to have out of the gates, and so, of course, we wanted to check in with Dr. Wells. We've been waiting to talk to Dr. Charlebois for a few days now. I mean, the story across the country is that inflation is impacting people, sure, at the gas pumps, and for sure when big ticket items come up. Maybe your family's looking at hoping to take a trip, a vacation that's doubled in price, or maybe you're looking at some of the services that folks provide, and if there's driving or transport involved, then their prices are going up. It seems like everything's more expensive. Well, the doors were blown off a story a short time ago when a journalist tweeted an image of $37 chicken breasts at a Loblaw's location. It was Siobhan Morris who said, "I beg your pardon." It was a chicken at about $27 a kilo, and of course, it had everybody, it seemed, outraged at Loblaw and its chairman, Galen Weston. Writing about this in the Globe and Mail is Dr. Sylvain Charlebois. You've heard him on the show before from the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, and a renowned expert in food trends across the country. It's nice to have you back on the show. It's been a little while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Nice to be with you, Ryan, this morning.
Yeah, those are new frames, new glasses, tortoise shell, nice round shape. I
guess
them.
so, but I see you have a nice setup there now. I think the first time we spoke was 3-4 years ago.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I've been following your show ever since. It's great. You're doing a great job right now.
Hey, thanks. We really appreciate it. And this is an audience that shows up every day looking for meaningful conversations on issues that matter to them. And so that's what we're doing. And hey, people, can talk about gas prices, and then some will say, well, I don't drive, I ride my bike. Or you can talk about the price of inflation in other areas, and people will say, I feel somewhat insulated from that. But everybody's got to eat. Take us into this story and what you're noticing, and then we'll get to some of the nuance.
Well, I mean, yesterday was StatsCan's CPI for December, and we saw again the gap between the general inflation rate and the food inflation rate has widened. Unfortunately, it's actually at 3.8%. So we haven't seen a 3.8% since March 2009, and so that's why. So life is becoming more expensive, but it's worse at the grocery store at 10.1%. So that's why people are still spooked at the grocery store. We spent the entire year, 2022, seeing that rate exceeding the inflation rate in Canada. We're probably going to be in that position for a while, until probably the spring, early summer, unfortunately.
Now, we'll obviously get a different answer when we talk to people in different areas of expertise as to what's driving this inflation, or why chicken breast is all of a sudden $37 for two. And I'll acknowledge in your Globe and Mail column, you did say, well, okay, this is, you kind of pointed out, you said this is like the boneless, skinless, grain-fed, or whatever it was. It was like a special chicken breast. It was a premium item. You say Loblaw's not the only grocer that has its prices inflated here, but for the average person to understand this story, when they're at the hockey rink talking to their friends, or when they're sipping coffee at the coffee shop, how do we understand the cause of this, and what might be factors that might bring grocery prices back down to earth? What should we be looking for?
Well, so about the chicken gate, I actually had an opportunity to talk to Siobhan Morris, the person from CTV who took the picture in Toronto. I told her, listen, when you look at the label very closely, you can see the FFs, free from antibiotics, and you're looking at a premium product. And so Loblaw's right. That week, in fact, I actually looked around in Toronto, and these weren't the most expensive chicken breasts in the GTA. Actually, Sobeys, their chicken breasts were more expensive. But for some reason, Ryan, when you're the spokesperson of your own company, you're an easy target. So people hate Loblaws, people want to hate Loblaws, and people want to hate Galen Weston, because really, I mean, because of our collective misunderstanding of how food systems work and how prices are set, people will basically focus on the one thing they understand, and that's the grocery store. And right now, the persona we all know is Galen Weston, and that's why a lot of people just don't like him at all.
I want to ask you this, and I told you I was going to bring this up. There's a bit of a hit piece actually targeting you right now on a Substack called The Orchard, written by journalist based out of Alberta, Jeremy Apple, and he asks, who the hell is the food professor? And the premise of his piece...
Actually, I don't think that was the initial title, by the way. If you look up...
did it change?
His title. Yeah, he did.
What did it say before?
I can't say it on air.
Oh, really? Well, you can say whatever you want
Oh,
here,
yeah.
but I digress. Yeah. Okay. So
Who the fuck is the food professor? That's what he said.
That was the original headline. Okay. Well, maybe it's
Yeah.
getting so much attention that he dialed back the fire on, or dialed back the flamethrower. I don't know. But he makes a point here, and you told me that you'd be happy to address it. But he points out that you've had a relationship in past with the Weston Foundation. He points out that in 2018 that you received a $60,000 grant from the Weston Foundation. The implication being, of course, is that will influence your public-facing commentary on Loblaw, on Galen Weston, and on food prices in Canada. Can I ask you to respond to the piece?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, I don't know who this guy is, but when you read the piece, you clearly feel anger. There's some sort of anger there that I don't understand, but he firmly believes that I was in conflict, or he implies it anyways, and that's a really serious accusation to make towards an academic. We have a conflict of interest policy at Dal, and I am in compliance with the policy for this simple reason. I do not have a relationship with the Weston Foundation anymore. That ended more than 5 years ago. I was an adjudicator for one of their food innovation granting programs. It's worth about $20 million. I was asked to evaluate files for free. I was doing it pro bono. As a gift, they gave me $60,000 so I can hire a postdoc. But the one thing that this author should know is that my relationship with Weston Foundation is not very good right now. In fact, it ended when I went public criticizing Loblaw for leading a bread cartel for 14 years. That was in 2017, December 20th. And so the program, my postdoc, ended at the time. They weren't pleased, and I was never invited again. So if he would have bothered to call either Dalhousie University, the Weston Foundation, or me, he would have known that I'm not in conflict at all. In fact, I have a conflict with the Weston Foundation right now, not because of my relationship with the Weston Foundation.
Let me ask you, you touch on, or you reference that bread fixing scandal. I still feel like, Sylvain, that's a story that really, in a sense,
oh my God,
it flew under the radar, really, because people think, it's a loaf of bread kind of deal. But how big of a deal was that? And in the context of trust toward grocers, do you think that impact, people have short memories, but does that continue to impact how people feel?
This is the other thing about this piece from this author out of Alberta. I mean, I've been doing this for 25 years. People have been calling me since Monday saying, what's going on here? People don't know who you are. I've written and criticized grocery stores forever. And the biggest piece, of course, was in the Globe against the bread cartel, against Loblaws, against the industry. I actually think that really Canadians were shortchanged, even though Loblaw became Santa Claus and gave $25 to everyone. We were shortchanged for a couple of reasons. One, the Competition Bureau is not doing its job. Consumers are absolutely unprotected right now from this oligopoly that we have. And secondly, really Loblaws should have gone to jail. I mean, they broke the law for 14 years. Why did we provide immunity to executives at Loblaws? Many people were involved. And the investigation, Ryan, is still ongoing after 8 years. 8 years, we still don't know what is going on. As a lab, we actually submitted a report to the Competition Bureau because they requested one. They wanted to know whether or not a cartel was possible in Canada. And we basically provided them with a report. Still nothing after 8 years. It's unbelievable.
Can you, in layperson's terms, can you really dumb it down for people like me that wouldn't be able to explain that story in one sentence? Is it basically just that, is it what everyone accuses gas stations of doing on the Friday of a long weekend? Collusion, cranking up prices, everybody cranks them up at the same time, everybody makes more money?
If you look at bread prices in Canada from 2001 to 2015, you saw, I mean, bread prices skyrocketed, especially between 2007 2009. As an academic, I couldn't explain it. I didn't know what was going on. And who would have thought that companies were breaking the law? I certainly didn't. I didn't think of that. but it did happen. And in 2015, when Loblaw disclosed to the Bureau without others knowing about it, you saw bread prices drop slightly for 2 years. And in 2017, that's when Loblaw told the entire world that they were guilty, along with Western bakeries. Allegedly, there are 5 other companies involved. And still, we don't know whether or not the Bureau is willing to say that these companies are guilty as well.
So you've just published a piece like hours before you're talking to us here. People can read it at saltwire.com. And I'm sure that it's published on other platforms as well. You call for
Toronto Sun, and I think the Edmonton Sun is covering it as well.
Okay, so I'm not surprised. It's all over the place. People are picking it up. You say it's time for a face-saving code for the food industry. You want to see grocers essentially held accountable by code. What would this look like?
Again, a lot of people are upset with food prices, but I do think that a lot of people just don't understand how things work in the food industry. Look at the dairy section right now. How much are you paying for butter?
To be honest with you, I haven't shopped for butter in a while, so bring me up to speed.
It's freaking expensive.
It's more than usual.
It's $8 a pop in Alberta right now. It's pretty expensive, and it's not because of grocers. It's because of supply management and the prices that we give to dairy farmers. Now, you're probably going to get some dairy farmers upset and calling you, but that's the reality. They're making more money, which is great for them. But at the end of the day, it's not because of grocers. So this code essentially will make things more transparent. But furthermore, we only have a handful of grocers with a lot of power. One of the things that most Canadians don't know is that to do business with Loblaws, you have to pay them first. Listing fees, marketing fees, administrative fees. PepsiCo to list, say, a bag of chips, Frito-Lay or whatever, they have to pay anywhere between $500 to $1 million without selling one bag to you and I. That's a lot of money. So that pressure has mounted over the years. So you got Sobeys, Loblaws, Walmart, all doing the same thing, putting pressure on processing, eliminating choices, eliminating variety for consumers, because you just don't want to invest in Canada with that kind of power. On the other hand, especially in Alberta, I know some really great independent grocers in Alberta. Co-op is one of them.
Friesen Brothers, my friend, is even better.
Yeah. I mean, those people are suffering because Loblaws and Walmart are getting better deals, and independent grocers are having a hard time competing. This code will create a level playing field, more competition, and that will help consumers in the end.
Okay, so this is this grocer code of conduct that you say is, quote, great news for consumers. In fact, you argue it should be considered a minor miracle. Let me give you some background, Sylvain. I don't know if I've disclosed this to you before, if it's come up. My grandpa was born and raised on a dairy farm. Some of my closest cousins are probably in the barns right now, and every time that supply management comes up, I know that they're going to blow up my phone and blow up my text messages.
Oh yeah,
I've argued with them oftentimes, always with a smile on our face, that a talk show host cannot leave supply management alone in Canada. The politician that probably most prominently spoke about it a few years ago, hoping to make waves, of course, was Maxime Bernier, trying to glean attention for his PPC, the fledgling party.
I spoke to Maxime Bernier a couple of times about supply. I disagree with him completely.
Take us into what you think should happen with supply management, and maybe a sentence or two for people that don't totally understand what it is. Farmers pay for quota, which allows them to produce a certain amount of product. You can't produce more product than the quota that you own, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the quota system allows us to produce what we need, basically. So we give quotas, you give quotas to people so they can produce the milk and the butter fat we need every year. I would keep the quota system. Okay, I would keep the quota system, because if you eliminate the quota system tomorrow morning, Ryan, we're drinking American milk. That's it. We're going to see a complete collapse of the dairy, which is why I disagree with Maxime Bernier. We need dairy farms, and strong dairy farms in Canada and Alberta and everywhere. That's a must. The things I would do, I would reform the Canadian Dairy Commission. That commission is not at the service of Canadian taxpayers. It services industry. Every time they set prices for farmers, we have no idea where these numbers are coming from. Going back to inflation, last year, Dairy milk prices at Farmgate increased by almost 11%. We don't know where these numbers came from. The process is not transparent. We need to change that, and it needs to be controlled by people not elected but appointed by the government, but at least have some variety beyond just dairy farmers running a crown corporation. The Dairy Commission is a crown corporation. Two, I would set a new class of milk and brought fat to export, because the products that we make in Canada are fabulous. And why not export to China? Why not export to different markets to grow our dairy sector? And three, instead of giving billions of dollars to dairy farmers, just because we want to compensate them for treaties and trade deals we make with other countries, basically create a fund to encourage farmers to exit the industry, the farmers who don't want to compete necessarily. And that's how you're going to build a stronger, better dairy sector, and you're going to support processing and provide consumers with good prices.
You know who I hear from most frequently when we talk about supply management in dairy? Beef farmers, ranchers, cow-calf operators.
They love supply management.
Oh no! Like, it's amazing, right? They raise the same livestock,
but that's the problem, Ryan. I mean, right now Ottawa's giving billions of dollars in compensation to dairy farmers. Guess what's they buy land. They inflate the value of land. Cattle producers, grain producers are stuck with an overcapitalized industry, and they're not part of. That's the problem that we have. We need to get the word out, talk about the big elephant in the room, because farmers are good people. They don't want to bash other farmers. They don't. I do, because, well, I focus on the system, not farmers. I don't want to criticize farmers, but I criticize the system, and the system is actually making Canadian agriculture cheaper and weaker, not better.
Okay. In closing, you point out in your piece in the Globe and Mail, people should read it. Canada has one of the lowest food inflation rates in the Western world. You say among the G7 nations, only Japan has a lower food inflation rate right now. But for somebody who wants to make grandma's fried cauliflower recipe and they see that heads of cauliflower are going to be $14, that is of little consolation. What's one storyline that the average Canadian should keep an eye on in this context this year?
Well, Galen Weston is not responsible for Germany's 20% food inflation rate. Okay, this is a global phenomena. Okay, blaming one company or one person is just pointless. You have to understand what's happening right now. Is there greed in the system? Probably. And one piece I would look into is right in your backyard, meat packing. There's something going on there. Beef prices are way too high. And so we need to investigate. We need a stronger competition bureau to protect Canadians and look at real problems, not fake politicized problems.
Okay, but something tells me if you're going look at meat packing right now, there's something going on. Something tells me that your spidey senses are telling you, maybe pointing you in the right direction. What is it that
retail
you think
prices
is going
don't
on?
make sense?
Well, so what do you think? What's prompting it? Is it supply and demand?
Look at farm gate prices and look at retail prices. Now you're not expecting a strong correlation there, but the correlation is so weak. You got to wonder what's going on. In the U.S., within months, Biden got a report suggesting that there was collusion in the United States. Within weeks, GBS wrote a $57 million check in compensation to consumers to avoid a lawsuit. That's how quick they deal with problems in the U.S. Why can't we do the same?
Dr. Sylvain Charlebois of the Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University, one of Canada's foremost experts in food policy, and food trends. I implore you to follow him on Twitter at Food Professor. Thanks for doing this. It's nice to see your face.
Take care, Ryan.
Yeah, you
Bye-bye.
bet. Minister Randy Boissonnault coming up in just a second. These conversations are powered by sponsors like the friendly local utilities provider that is Park Power. And we told you how excited we are to extend our partnership with them into 2023, because that means a fresh promo code for you real talkers. That's right. When you bring your business to Park Power right now, even better when you bundle your services, electricity, natural gas, and internet, you're going to save more than ever before. The promo code REALTALK23 saves you $50 off the first bill of each service you choose. So you compare rates at parkpower.ca. You realize you're going to pay less by bringing your business to them. You use the promo code REALTALK23 to sign for electricity, natural gas, and internet, and your first bill has $150 knocked off it. No strings attached. You can sign up today. It takes less than 5 minutes at parkpower.ca. Now, once you're doing business with Park Power, then it's time to get serious about your solar goals. That's right. More Canadians will look to sustainable energy development this year than ever before. More people are putting up solar panels because it's more affordable than ever before, more reliable than ever before, and easier because teams like Kubi Renewable Energy do all the paperwork for you. You go to kubienergy.ca, you get your free quote. They can tell you about that $40,000 interest-free loan from the feds. And by the way, unless you live at the Taj Mahal, your solar power system's probably not going to be 40 grand. The average system comes in under 20 grand these days. Kubi Renewable Energy has a great partnership with Park Power too. So in the summer months when your system's providing more juice than you need, they pump it back to the grid, and Park Power gives you more dough than the big guys would. It's a wonderful partnership thanks to our friends at Kubi Renewable Energy. And while we're talking about going green, while we're talking about sustainability, it's a perfect time to remind you about Eden Landscaping. They launched that urban butterfly front yard approach this year to rave reviews. More people are looking at things like native grasses in their front yards. They want to bring the plant life back that's been here for millennia. They want to attract more pollinators. It's better for the environment, and of course, it pays off in the aesthetic of your yard design as well. Why not bring your outdoor space to life? Do it with the team that's been trusted in Edmonton and area for more than 20 years. That's Eden Landscaping at landscapeedmonton.ca. It's always a pleasure to be able to check in with our next guest. He's the MP for Edmonton Centre. He's the Federal Minister of Tourism, the Associate Minister of Finance as well, the Honourable Randy Boissonnault, our guest on this Wednesday morning. It's nice to see your face, and thanks for making time for us. Hang on one second, Minister. We got a bit of like sort of like an underwater kind of a thing going on with your audio. So Johnny's going to troubleshoot it with you. I want to make sure I can hear you as clearly as possible. Why don't we try again? You want to say hello?
Hello, Ryan.
It sounds like, Johnny, why don't we get it figured out behind the scenes? And no, there's nothing we can do about it. Randy, it sounds like there's something going on with the mic, and I wonder if we can troubleshoot it. Why don't we pull him off screen for a second, and I'll get around to some other stuff, and we'll bring back Randy Boissonnault in just a second, federal minister. Obviously, there's a lot to talk about with Randy, an openly gay federal politician, by the way, so I'm curious to pick his brain on what happened last night at the Philadelphia Flyers game as well. Ivan Provorov, you've heard, the Flyers star defenseman refusing to take to the team's warm-up skate wearing a Pride-themed sweater, the numbers and the name bars on the back of the jersey with the rainbow color scheme, representative of Pride, representative of diversity and inclusion initiatives. Provorov says that his religious beliefs as a Russian Orthodox believer, an Orthodox Christian, preclude him from participating in or supporting such an initiative. So I put it out on my Twitter. I said, shame on the Flyers for playing Provorov after this debacle. If he's going to opt out of supporting diversity and inclusion, he can do it from the press box. That was my initial take. That was my gut reaction. That was the first thing that came to mind, was that it didn't make sense that Ivan Provorov was going to play in the game. And so I figured he should sit out. Well, not everybody agrees, right? Not everybody agrees, to say the least. In my Twitter mentions, Tally says Provorov's free to do what he wants, and the Flyers are free to play who they want. Leave it alone. Tyler, meantime, says, so you're saying he shouldn't play because he thinks differently? Hockey isn't for everyone, I guess. That's called a red herring. That's a bad faith argument. Conrad wonders, why is diversity always tied to this group? I don't think he means the Philadelphia Flyers. I think he means the gay and lesbian community. I think that's what he means. He says, should other groups' beliefs be brought into the pregame warm-up? I don't know, Conrad. I respond to him. I said, you mean like the military?
Well, they're not beliefs. Can you imagine if he had done this on a night honoring Indigenous culture or
Black Lives Matter, the military, anything else, cancer survivors?
This isn't opinions or beliefs. This is basic human rights. And I think everyone knows that. You said this morning when we were going to talk about this, like, it's so black and white here. We don't need to debate this.
Yeah.
Although
I do think there's room for nuance in the debate.
Of course.
I do think that there's room. A lot of people are talking about forced speech. A lot of people are talking about imposing beliefs on people. A lot of people are talking about religious freedoms. I do think these are points that need to be considered here. But at the end of the day, when it all comes down to it, this is an NHL initiative. This is a league-wide initiative to send a clear message to gay, lesbian, queer, bi, trans hockey fans and potential hockey fans that you have a place
100%.
In this community.
And it's the bare minimum, dude. Ivan, it's the bare minimum. And if you don't want to involve yourself, then you're definitely right, Ryan. You just shouldn't have played the game.
Sit out the game.
Take this one off. But you can't exclude yourself from the night and then play the game. It's ridiculous.
How are we doing with Minister Boissonnault? Any
Let's
luck on
go.
this one?
He's good.
All right,
He's got this headset on.
Minister, I would have been devastated if this conversation wasn't going to work out. Thanks for donning. You look like an air traffic controller right now, but I think you're going to be.
You.
Oh, but you are loud and clear, my man. Hey, it's nice to see your face. You wanted to say, I could hear you saying something about Friesen Brothers.
Look, Friesen Brothers,
Park Power.
Kubi,
It was
Park Power. They're all
about.
my favorite companies. And I got to say, I'm going to make a plug for the feds. If you get an audit done in your house, you get like a $5,000 grant.
Yes.
But there's $40,000 in loans. So look, what you talked about with the solar panel, you could get like double that in a loan from us, the federal government, to put those awesome solar panels on your house. That's all I wanted to say.
Tell you that we were hanging out with the Kubi Renewable Energy team a while ago, and of course we always like to check in with our sponsors. And I say, how are things going with the Canada? We've been mentioning this Canada Greener Homes Grant. It's the 10-year $40,000 interest-free loan from the feds, and they said, we actually thought about reaching out to you and asking you to lay off the mentions. They said their phone lines have been slammed. They said they're hiring, like they're always hiring, but they're hiring more installers than ever before. That's got to be music to your ears.
It is. It's what we want to see. And look, on the Ivan thing and LGBT rights, look, I love what you guys said, Johnny and Ryan. It's the bare minimum. And look, if you don't support basic human rights for women, for Indigenous people, for people of color, for people who live with disabilities, then it's on you to explain why. And religious beliefs don't trump human rights. So I love what the league is doing. I was at the game last night when we thumped the Kraken. And I remember when I was special advisor and we worked with the league on this idea of hockey is for everyone. And so my hat's off to the Edmonton Oilers, to the leadership that the league has shown. And look, there is something you might have seen before Christmas. We had the Russian ambassador coming out and saying that LGBT rights don't apply in his country and we should stop talking about them here in Canada. And there's a bit of a foofara on Twitter with the Russian embassy here in Canada. And so Minister Joly summoned that ambassador to get an explanation. And so I think that the Russian Federation and some of its diaspora members are trying to take attention away from the illegal war in Ukraine, and going after LGBT rights is one of the ways to do that.
Yeah. Can I say, though, that, for whatever his religious beliefs may be, and a lot of hate mongers and including homophobes will wrap themselves in Jesus' cloak and hide behind religion to justify personal beliefs they may have. Nobody is, and I don't mean to be glib here. Nobody is demanding that Ivan Provorov hold hands with a fella and take him out for a walk around the park. Nobody's asking Ivan Provorov to participate in activities that would make him uncomfortable. People are asking him as a teammate and a team member to indicate support that's being demonstrated by the Philadelphia Flyers and the National Hockey League and the hockey community writ large. Now, let me ask you, in politics, everybody knows that votes are whipped and things like that. But if we compare a caucus, like the Liberal Party of Canada, the elected MPs, the ministers, the cabinet, the prime minister, to a team, if you're a team And the Prime Minister says, hey, during Pride, the members of our team, our MPs, are going to wear whatever it is, the Liberal logo in the Pride colors or whatever it is. And one of your team members, one of your MPs said, because of my religious beliefs, I'm not going to attend the press conference and I'm not going to wear the lapel pin. How would that resonate with the rest of the team? And what do you think the Prime Minister might do about it?
Well, they definitely have a chat with the Prime Minister. And look, when you're a team, you show up. And there's some things that my Liberal team does that I don't agree with. I don't agree with every single policy that we have as a party. And that's party politics. That's being a team. And I mean, being a team means you show up for people and you open your mind to understand difference and you open your mind to understand diversity. And the best teams, Ryan, as you know, because you've done this with your own show, are, it's when you collect people with different talents and different strength and you play to your strength and you have a team of really strong people that makes the whole team better than if you were just a bunch of individuals. And that's what it means. It means putting your own ego and your own idea of self-advancement at the door and focusing on the goals and the mission and the objectives of the team. And I think Ivan fell short of that when it came to the Flyers. I love what the Flyers have done. Philadelphia is a great center for LGBT rights. And actually, anecdotally, the first time that Canada led an LGBTQ2 trade mission with 15 of our companies from LGBT-owned companies from Canada to the United States, it was to Philadelphia. With the National Gay and Lesbian Summit, there were 750 companies there that were LGBT owned and another 750 companies that serve the LGBTQ population, 1,500 companies for a week-long summit, and Canada showed up, and we've been to that summit every year since. So there's a lot that we're doing and a lot of lessons that sports people are going to learn. And Ryan, the sports community is stepping up, and I can tell you, when we host FIFA in 26 with the United States and Mexico, it's going to be the safest, the most diverse, the most LGBTQ friendly football game you're ever going to see. And guess what? You're going to be able to drink beer here too.
Boy, is that ever going to be different than what we saw in Qatar.
Absolutely.
To state the obvious and to say the least, I will say on a lighter note of this, if we can find the lighter side of a player not supporting Pride initiatives, I've seen some pretty funny comments online. Some people are saying like this from the city of brotherly love. Somebody said somebody said a hockey player concerned about gay rights, bro. You're worried about the wrong D. And my favorite comment probably was, this guy calls his colleague out on the ice his partner. How can this guy have a problem? So there are some people, notably gay commentators, having some fun with the story. I appreciate you taking the question.
Absolutely.
I like to pull back the curtain. This show's a little bit different. People know that. You know that. And your team is always very clear with me. They'll say, hey, Minister Boissonnault is available if you want to talk about just transition, for example. And I say, yeah, but I'd also like to talk about the closure of Maligne Lake Road. And obviously we'll talk about Ivan Provorov. And your team always says to me, the minister's good to talk about whatever. And so I know you won't mind this curveball question coming at you based on the conversation we just had with Dr. Sylvain Charlebois about food inflation. Associate Minister of Finance, that's you. Jason in our live chat says, please ask the Associate Minister of Finance why government is so slow to act regarding food prices on behalf of all Canadians. How would you take the question?
Well, I thank Jason for the question. And I know that, the inflation that we're in is really affecting people at their homes and at the grocery stores. There is a little bit of a hope of good news. The CPI numbers came out this week, and we're now at 6.3% inflation. That's still 3 times higher than we want to see. But now 5 months in a row, we've seen that inflation come down. And some of that's related to gas prices going down, Jason. But it's also, we're seeing the increase in food prices start to slow down. So that's not where we want them, but we are going to get there. We have tasked, and my friend and colleague, Minister Champagne, has tasked the Competition Bureau and all the owners of the grocery stores to meet with the Competition Bureau to make sure that there's no collusion going on. What we are in is in a global world with food prices, and we're going to make sure that if there's any egregious profit taking, we're going to address that. This really does stem from the illegal war in Ukraine, food prices rising there, the input costs of the fact that energy costs have gone up, that we've had the breadbasket of the world essentially not be able to ship its grain and other products. And that's put a price spike on all the inputs into food prices. So this is why, with limited levers in terms of how we can stop food prices from increasing in the short term, this is why we've put things in the window, like doubling the GST tax credit, removing interest loan, what is it called, the federal interest, the interest on federal student loans and apprenticeship, and also making sure that people get a $500 top up if they're lower income Canadians. And so the affordability supports that we are putting in the window are to help with the short-term pinch. 23 is going to be a tough year, Ryan. I'm going to say that straight up. We're still not out of the war in Ukraine. China's just starting to open up after COVID. We're going to have some turbulence in the Canadian economy. We're now in pre-budget consultations with people. And what I will say this is, Ryan, is if we take a look at Alberta leading the economy for the next 2 to 3 years, the national economy, and if we take a look at all the fundamentals that we have here in Alberta, there's no place in the world that I'd rather weather the 23 economic storm than here in Canada and here in Alberta.
When you talk about student loans in particular, I mean, obviously you just said a million things, and people are going to pick out what's most relevant to them.
Sure.
Would you like to see, or is there conversation around the cabinet table about making student loans interest-free in perpetuity in Canada? I know it's an idea that pops up, obviously of great interest to students.
So look, I worked on this, I want to say 35 years ago when I had hair, and I was in student government, income contingent student loans, and where we can, what we did though, instead of going full income contingent student loan where it's interest free, is we made sure that they were means tested. So I think now it's, if you're making 50,000 or less, your loans don't kick in and the interest doesn't increase. And now what we've done is we've got rid of the federal interest on student loans in permanent, like in perpetuity. And that's for apprentices too. So now if the provinces want to match us, we'd invite them to do that. The provinces have healthier balance sheets after COVID than the federal government. And that, Ryan, is because we spent 20% of the national wealth to get us through COVID. So we've taken the leadership. We've removed that interest from federal student loans. The other thing we did for people who are listening is we doubled the Canada Worker Benefit. So if you're a low-income family and you've got the Canada Worker Benefit before, it's now going to double. And more importantly, you're going to get half of your benefits up front. You don't have to wait for the end of the year. The other thing, I know you got seniors listening to your show and people who are on benefits like who get the Canada Child Benefit, which I think is the best thing we've done since forming government. And now the childcare benefits, all of those benefits like CPP, Guaranteed Income Supplement, Old Age Security, Canada Child Benefit, those are all indexed to inflation. So what that means is whatever the inflation settles out to be in this year, you're going to get that increase in next year's payments. And that's going to help. When it comes to the seniors payments, they get those increases every 3 months, Ryan. So we take the basket of inflation in those 3 months, and then we increase those payments for seniors receiving them.
I wanted to play a clip here, Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith
Sure.
talking about this just transition, and we'll get to your take on this. I know that this is a top priority on the messaging side from the federal government right now. They want the conversation to be focused, and we're hitting it from a number of different angles. If you're just joining us on the Mixlr live streaming audio app, you're hearing the federal tourism minister, the associate finance minister, the Honourable Randy Boissonnault. Here's Alberta's Premier Danielle Smith just a few hours ago.
This is why I'm also concerned about Justin Trudeau's just transition, as he calls it, because when I hear the words just transition, it signals eliminating jobs. And for Alberta, that is a non-starter. I think we all share the same goals when it comes to reducing emissions, and that's across all industries, including oil and natural gas. We are working with the federal government closely on technologies like carbon capture, utilization and storage, hydrogen, critical minerals, but the good work gets lost when they use this kind of divisive, polarizing language. Because the world is looking for energy, for more petrochemicals, for more LNG. This is not an industry in decline, but it is one of the industries that is strategic to world energy security.
Okay, so that's Alberta's Premier. How would you respond publicly?
Well, I like what the Premier said about emissions reduction in major industrial sectors. We're working really closely. She's right. We're working collaboratively with the province on that. And Ryan, we put billions of dollars in the 22 budget on carbon capture, use and storage. So look, let's talk about the words that I don't even like to say, just transition, because it's a European term. And the late Honourable Jim Carr, my colleague who was Minister for the Prairies,
our condolences,
passed away. Yeah, he is a great man and was a great man and a mentor and literally my parliamentary dad. Seamus O'Regan, when he was Minister of Natural Resources, spent 2 entire years listening to this entire region, to people in the sector, to workers. And we are not going to get to net zero as a country without the workers in the oil and gas sector, without the ingenuity of the oil and gas sector, and without high-paying, quality, sustainable jobs in the oil and gas sector. And the Sustainable Jobs program that we're talking about, and it's in the middle of us finishing it, getting it through cabinet. So I can't talk about exactly what it's going to be because it's not not tabled in the House yet. But I can say that if you take a look at the fall economic statement and you see the Sustainable Jobs Secretariat that we put in place, the $250 million that we've earmarked to make sure that people have high quality, sustainable, long-term jobs that are greener jobs in the oil and gas sector, in hydrogen. Ryan, I think you and I talked about the Air Products announcement that Francois Philippe and Champagne and I made in the fall. $1.6 billion investment from a U.S. company here into Northeast Edmonton to build the world's largest net zero hydrogen plant. And we put $300 million into that. The province put $161 million into it. Why? Because it's going to be thousands and thousands of jobs. Just yesterday, Dan Van Dal and I made a $10 million announcement. $4 million almost to Edmonton Global, $3 million to U of A and Seaford Technologies, $3 million to Alberta Motor Transport Association. Why? To create that whole hydrogen ecosystem that we need here. And I met Cole, who was driving, Ryan, he was driving the world's first dual fuel armored vehicle semi. And it takes 31 kilograms of hydrogen. It displaces 40% of the diesel, and the range is 1,600 kilometers. And what are they transporting? Precious minerals, stones, bonds, bullion, and all kinds of precious cargo. And it's a dual fuel on the way to net zero vehicle. And he's excited because he's like the test company for this stuff. And he wants these kind of vehicles to be across the province. And so do we. And so, look, I think there's a bit of a tempest in the teapot here going on with the terminology. And I can say, Ryan, it's all about jobs. It's about more jobs. It's about adding jobs, not subtracting jobs. And even the International Energy Agency and Jonathan Wilkinson, my colleague, has said very clearly, there's going to be high-paying, quality jobs in the oil and gas sector well past our net zero targets of 2050.
Have you seen this Malcolm Mays cartoon? This is we'll describe it. For most people will hear this on the podcast. So it's a couple of oil workers on a conveyor belt, and they're heading through some like this machine. It looks like the flux capacitor is what it looks like, a big version of it. It's the just transition, and it's got all the gears churning, and as they go through the machine and emerge out of it, they're dressed as fast food workers, and they're dressed as Walmart greeters, asking, would you like fries with that? And this has been really, I think, some of the messaging from the provincial government, from some people in the traditional energy industries, oil and gas and the like, in particular the oil sands, about the so-called just transition. A loaded phrase which, by the way, on the surface, it's like social justice warrior. The words aren't inherently bad, but they're used in a way that make them that way. The phrase, of course, becomes loaded. It's people with their jobs in the crosshairs. That's the understanding of it. So how does the federal government at a ground level? I mean, you do interviews like these, obviously. Yep. You make announcements. You invest in new technology. You present opportunities for people to transition into new and promising careers. But how do you reach the average person with like dirt on their boots and grime under their fingernails, that all they're hearing on the job site is they're turning wrenches? And of course, I'm oversimplifying what people do.
I'm with you.
But as they hear it on the shop floor, they're hearing about fucking Trudeau, and they're hearing about all, you know what I'm saying, Randy?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying, Minister, I should say. And how do you reach those folks?
We got to reach people one-on-one through shows like this, like you said. But look, I was meeting with a bunch of labor leaders yesterday with Minister Van Dal, who's responsible for Prairie's Can and for the North. And I said to the guys, I said, look, get me in front of the members, get me in front of the rank and file. I'm pretty sure they're not voting for me, but they might after we chat. And it's reaching out to people in our networks and our relationships. Look, I'll tell you a story. It comes from the 21 campaign. And, I lost in 19 and then decided to get back on the horse and ride again. And I was outside of the city market, Loblaws, right in Brewery District. And this big guy, like 6'2", 6'3", walked by with his girlfriend, and he looked at me and he was going to stop and chat. And then he walked by. And 20 minutes later, he came back out and he said, I'm an oil and gas worker. Would you talk to me, Mr. Liberal? I said, of course I'll talk to you. What's your name? He said, my name's John King. And he said, I made a mistake. He said, I didn't even give you a chance. He said, but I assumed you wouldn't talk to me because I'm an oil and gas worker. I'm like, John, where do you live? He said, I live 3 blocks over there, right in Oliver. And I said, well, look, my whole family works in the oil and gas sector. And my dad and brother pulled rocks out of Albion Sands to do the road so that the oil sands could thrive. And what's on your mind? And he said, look, I've got a good job. I know it's gonna keep my family, safe and healthy, and I'm going to pay my mortgage, but I'm already studying for the next thing, because I know that if I take my skills right now and do a little bit of changing or upgrading, I'm either going to be able to go into more green technology, or I might even pivot and do something in pharmacy. I just don't know yet, but I'm studying so that I can make the next move. What I want to know from you, Randy, since you've introduced yourself, is that it's not going to be a switch. Just don't shut off the switch on me. Just let me know what the pathway is so that I can keep paying my bills. I said, John, the reason I'm running is so that we have a voice in Alberta, that we have a pipeline between Alberta and the Trudeau government, that we can be heard. And we had about a 15, 20-minute conversation. He said, you know what? I'm not sure. I've never voted your way. He said, but you got me thinking, and I'm pretty sure my girlfriend's going to vote for you, and I'm going to give it a good thought. Those are the kind of conversations you need to have. I'm not going to leave anybody stranded, Ryan. The idea that somehow the federal government is going to shut down entire sectors and put hundreds of thousands of people out of work is patently ridiculous. It's false. And I think the premier should check her facts before she goes and puts out a tweet that's trying to get a bunch of heat. Like 2.7 million workers is more than the entire workforce of Alberta, Ryan. And so there's a lot of work we have to do. I really want the government of Alberta to come to the table for the regional tables that Jonathan Wilkinson and I will be leading here with industry, with labor, with workers, with the government. It's a partnership to walk through this evolution of energy together. And CCUS, like, we literally put billions on the table so that we can lower emissions out of our oil and gas, out of our oil sands. And we need the province to come to the table and say, what are they going to do on CCUS? We're there. Industry's ready. We just need the province to be clear about what they're going to do. So, Ryan, I got relationships with ministers in Premier Smith's cabinet. She's written me a nice letter recently. We got to find common ground and get past this, because it's all about more jobs and better jobs.
Let me just ask you quickly. I know minister schedules are packed. How much more time do I have you? It'll impact what questions I ask. Do I have 3-4 minutes with you?
Of course you do.
Okay.
And let's talk about investment too. Like, this province needs investment, and Sovereignty Act doesn't help with that. We can go there if you want.
Oh.
But look, we got Dow Chemical wanting to put 12 to 16 billion here in the Alberta heartland for a plant that's not only going to build, and create more polypropylene, Ryan, it's going to extract 2 megatons out of the air because they're going to put a huge CCUS stack up. Do we want that money to go south? Do we want that money to go to the US? No, it's like several million person hours of work. It would be one of the biggest things we've built in this province since the oil sands. So I'm not letting this go. And I'm not going to let the province stand in the way. Like, we got to get this done together.
Yeah. Do you feel, though, I mean, I would feel like, there's nobody that's like particularly obtuse that's going to be listening to this show. It's a savvy audience. It's an engaged audience. The point I'm about to make, besides shots across the bow, is that people are aware that a provincial election is happening here in May. And do we just
sooner?
Yeah, or sooner. Do we have to acknowledge that basically we might have to wait until after the provincial election, either way, depending on who wins either way, to see any real cooperation between the provincial and federal governments? You know that Alberta's premier is going to be fighting Justin Trudeau all the way through till election day, because it's going to really, really resonate well with some of their target audiences, including down in Calgary. And you know that the NDP are going to present themselves as a party that, would stand up for Alberta's interests, but would like to cooperate, have a positive relationship with Ottawa. And then it'll be up to Albertans to decide. It'll be up to Albertans to decide whether or not they want to see a fight or whether or not they want to see a more friendly approach. Do we just have to wait until June to see these two governments sit down at the same table? I mean, honestly, what do you think?
There's too much at stake to wait. But I do think the politics of the politics is as you've described them. I think the New Democrats and the UCP are in a fight for the battle of the soul of Alberta. I think Albertans are going to have to decide what that looks like. And you're right, the battleground is Calgary, probably even the seat south of the Bow River in Calgary. And but what's too important for me to get, to finish the childcare deal on the private side of things, to finish to get to the point where we're just literally focused on bringing billions of dollars to our province. And look, are we going to have to wait to sign some major deals and figure out what it looks like? Yeah, the election's really important, but I'm not waiting from now till May to get important deals signed, attracting international investment to this country and this province. There's too much at stake. Like my own tourism file, like we're not going to miss a whole tourism season just because of politics being played on Twitter and in the media. So there's lots that we have to do. There's lots that we're going to do, and the federal government is here to be a partner with the government of Alberta, but also with Alberta workers and with industry and with unions, because we're all in this together. And Ryan, you and I lived through this. Like we lived through the transformation of the oil economy in the 70s and 80s when we're running out of conventional oil, and the Lougheed government put in really smart policies. Peter Lougheed leaned in and put public policy in place to create the oil sands research facility, to literally invest with Ontario, the Liberal government of Canada, in creating Syncrude. That's what it was. And the whole explosion, if you will, the whole expansion of the oil sector with Anne McClellan as Natural Resources Minister and Ralph Goodale as Finance Minister, we watched that happen. And that was a transformation of the economy. And now we've got this global economy that's saying green is good. We've got to save the planet. And the investment's going to follow those places that have low emissions. We can do that work right here with Alberta Ingenuity.
You are the federal tourism minister, and the big tourism story, one of them.
Yes. Sure.
I'm about to talk about a really exciting tourism story in just a little bit, Minister, which is Jasper in January, and I'm gonna show off all my pictures from my weekend out in Jasper and all that. But in Banff National Park, south on the Highway 93, the Parks Canada, the federal government essentially, but Parks Canada, you'll clarify, I know, is closing personal vehicle access on Maligne Lake Road. They say obviously that the demand for parking up there, the visitor demand, is way higher than the venue can accommodate, and so there'll be shuttle buses, how people can access. They're obviously walking up on the side of the road. Your general take on this? The provincial government's pissed off about it. The provincial government says that they should build more parking lots, that closing the road to people's personal access is not the solution, not the answer. What role have you had in this decision, and what's your take on it?
So look, Parks Canada and I work really closely together. They report directly to my colleague, Minister Guilbeault, Minister of Environment and Climate Change. That's where Parks sits in the federal family. But look, when we survey people around the world why they come to Alberta, it's for the national parks. And you and I know the song growing up, Pave Paradise, put up a parking lot. We're not going to do that. And we're not going to do that because, look, what people come for is that photo that you just saw. And we have 5,000 to 6,000 people a day that want to come up to a parking area that's 300 to 400. The shuttles are going to be able to accommodate that. It's going to actually lower the carbon footprint. It's going to allow more people to get up there and enjoy it. It's actually accessible for people who right now can't get up there because the parking lot's full. They get up there, they turn around, and they got to go down. They can't even see what's there. So it's an accessibility thing. It's there's a climate change thing, but really is about sharing the park with more people and not knocking down a bunch of trees and wrecking the view and putting up a parking lot. So Minister Lowen and I have talked about this. Todd and I had a really good meeting about tourism before the Christmas break. And Ryan, just for your listeners, like after oil and gas, tourism is Alberta's number 2 export. Think about that.
Is that right?
We export $8 billion worth of tourism dollars that come to our province from the rest of the world and the rest of the country. We are in the big 4. It's Alberta, BC, Ontario, Quebec. Those are the big 4 provinces for tourism. It's Canada's number 1 service export. 1 in 10 jobs in this country are in tourism. 56% of them are in rural Canada. It is women, youth, LGBT, people of color, people living with disabilities. It is a remarkable sector. And under my watch, we're going to take it from 2% of GDP to much higher. We're going to have more coordination in the federal system. We're going to lean in. We're going to go get more sporting events, more cultural events, more festivals from around the world. Because look, number 1, number 2, and number 9 most visited national parks in the country are right here in our province. I'm working with Travel Alberta, working with the province, working with Indigenous tourism of Alberta. There is nothing that we don't have to offer the world. When you add culinary and our great cities and our wide open spaces, I can't wait to see your segment on Jasper in January, because that's what we're promoting to the world.
Well, hang on, literally right after we talk. I'm going to show you a slow-mo video of a smoked old-fashioned that'll blow your freaking mind. Number 9. So you got Banff and Jasper like 1 and 2.
Waterton.
Waterton.
Waterton's number 9.
I was wondering if it was. I was going to wonder if it was Elk Island, but it's Waterton. Okay, well there you go. Hey, how much of this airline debacle? It seems like the state of Canada, and it's not just Canada, but the state of airlines in Canada, air travel in Canada, let me say, seems to be a huge mess. Does that chase people away from traveling? And if so, what could be the implications for tourism revenue? That's got to be something you're thinking about.
I really love the question. It is. And Omar Alghabra, my colleague for the transport minister, is really important and working hard on this. And he's called the airlines to the carpet on this. Ryan, what happened during the pandemic is we lost a lot of pilots. We lost a lot of air traffic controllers. We lost a ton of baggage handlers that quite frankly went to work for logistics companies. Think Amazon, think Purelator, think others, because they're working inside. They're not working outside anymore. So the whole industry has had to hire people back. That said, we probably have way too over concentration of gateway cities in this country. And so I'm really interested in making sure that Edmonton gets more direct flights, that we see what Calgary's just done by, putting the WestJet hub in Calgary is a good move. But why not more flights to Halifax, to Winnipeg, to other cities so that we take the pressure off of Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal? And you've seen that Porter's decided to make a big move here, like 24 planes, $1.4 billion. That's going to be a hub that's going to be based in Edmonton. It's very exciting. So lots to come on air traffic, and I would say improving the air travel experience in this next year under Minister's watch.
Okay. The last thing I want is for your team to blacklist us and to not get any more interviews. So I better not keep you like 20 minutes past the time. But I do like to make sure that the audience has a voice in these conversations. They're a huge part of what we do here at Real Talk. So we'll wrap with Kathy's question in the live chat. She says, is there anything that the Liberals are looking at doing for those of us who are either single or married with no kids? We seem to get left out of a lot of the financial aid incentives. That from Kathy.
Right. Just do that again. The audio cut out, my friend.
Oh, sorry about that. Kathy's wondering what the federal government's looking at with regards to financial aid or incentives for folks that are single or married with no kids. She says we're often left out.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And look, the doubling of the GST tax credit is one of them. We've reduced personal taxes on the middle class 3 times. If you're running a business, your business taxes are also lower. And we've actually reduced personal taxes every year for the last 5 years so that you get more of your take-home pay every month, but also at the end of the year when you get your taxes. And it's pre-budget consultation right now. So, Ryan, I'm going to encourage people to write to me or to go to letstalkbudget2023.ca and send me your ideas. Like we're gonna stay close to Canadians. We're gonna stay close to Edmontonians and Albertans. And if you have ideas of what you think we might be able to put in the window to, make life more affordable during this inflationary cycle, let me know. I'm going to be at the Realtors meeting later today in front of 600-700 people talking about housing. How do we make housing more affordable? How do we get more supply? How do we continue to partner with that sector? So, Ryan, my office is always open, and so is our government to get ideas and suggestions from Edmontonians and Albertans.
All right, let's talk budget 2023.ca. We've thrown everything at you today. You want to talk about blowing up supply management? You want to talk about blowing up supply management?
Hey, look at this. Look at these guys. Not today, my friend.
There you go. Let's talk budget 2023.ca. That's the Associate Minister of Finance. He's the Federal Minister of Tourism. He's the MP for Edmonton Centre, the Honourable Randy Boissonnault. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, guys. Take care. Bye.
You bet. Hey, I don't care what your political stripe is. I don't care what your political affiliation is. I always appreciate an elected official that's willing to take curveball questions on about 5 or 6 different fronts.
Coming in hot.
Questions that have not been provided to their team ahead of time. To be clear, we don't provide questions to any guest ahead of time. But I want to say, regardless of if you vote Conservative, Liberal, NDP, Green, or other, I appreciate elected officials that are willing to just hang out on the show and say, throw the questions at me.
And Randy's great. Well-spoken, really quick. He never shies away from anything you ask him.
No, he really hasn't. So we appreciate that. That's the Honourable Randy Boissonnault. All right, I made you this promise on Twitter. I made you this promise on Instagram. Typically on Wednesdays for MyJasper Memories, presented by our wonderful friends at Tourism Jasper. We'll tell you about a big opportunity that's out there. It's like a big initiative or a big program or maybe an intimate experience. But this week's going to be a little bit different because I just want to talk about my trip out there. I want to tell you about MyJasper Memories. And of course, this is all stuff you can still do because it's still Jasper in January, right? And that's what drew me and my brother Kyle out to Banff National Park just this past weekend. And what a wonderful opportunity it was. So he hit the Highway 93, the Icefields Parkway, coming up from Calgary. We hit the 16, the Yellowhead, and headed west. It was me and Moses, our boxer. As you could see, there were some nice mountain sheep. There were some rams there on the side of the road of particular interest to Mo. Now, of course, we had to get up to Marmot Basin. Just beautiful conditions up there. Johnny was like -4 when we were up there.
Looks beautiful.
Just an amazing day. These smiles smeared across our face are a testament to the experience that is Marmot Basin. Lots of snow. They haven't seen a ton of snowfall recently out there, but the base is still pretty good. In terms that skiers and snowboarders will understand, I didn't bust out my rock board. I used my regular snowboard, no damage done, and still enough snow for us to have a wonderful time. Check out this bowl. This was my brother's lunch at Marmot Basin in the Caribou Lodge.
Okay.
No, my brother lives a plant-based lifestyle. Woo! And it was like, I know he won't mind me telling this story. They've got this menu, this fabulous menu out there, right? Like I went, of course, with like the bacon cheeseburger and the poutine. I couldn't help myself. But Jonas is reading about this Buddha bowl, and he thinks he says it looks absolutely fantastic, but it's the caribou Buddha bowl. And so he asks our server in the lounge, "Can I get the caribou Buddha bowl, but could you hold the caribou?"
Boom.
And she looks at him and she says, "Well, sir, there's not caribou." She said, "It's the Caribou Lounge. There's not." The caribou are a protected species. This is a national park.
Yeah.
He said. So I was telling him for the whole rest of the weekend, I'm yelling, "Hold the caribou!" He had a wonderful time out there. So we have a great day up at Marmot Basin. And then, of course, there's so much to do out there. We hit the Hotel, the Athabasca Hotel.
Love it.
Yeah, we just as you can see, had just the lousiest time. That's Travis Watt, by the way, in the middle. We ran into Watty out there. We didn't know he was going to be out there. He's the founder of PWS Imports. I'm just planting a seed. Coming up next month, we're going to be launching the Real Talk Bourbon Cask 2.0 in partnership with Watty and PWS Imports.
Looked
And
like
so we were toasting our partnership there and, of course, having a lot of fun. And then a Jasper band, a really wonderful
band. Yeah, this looks like a rocking show.
Sons and Daughter took to the stage. And it was a room full of people that were just having an absolute blast, dancing, and just a huge smile. I was smiling so big my face hurt. There were some real talkers we ran into out there. You know who you are. I say when a real talker comes up to me out in the wild and lets me know who they are, there's a rule that they do not buy the next round. And so there were several people taking advantage of that unofficial promotion at the Athabasca that night. Boy, did we ever have fun. This, of course, is the brand new Evil Dave's Grill. They moved locations, I guess, about a year ago now, and boy, can the team at Evil Dave's mix an old-fashioned.
Nice.
Like, yeah, the menu's great. Yeah, the menu's spectacular, as a matter of fact, but I'm an old-fashioned guy. I'm an old-fashioned kind of a guy, Johnny.
So am I, and I love my ultimate favorite.
Can I show you
the
this?
Smoky old-fashioned.
So
this
this
looks
video,
incredible.
I shot this at Terra, which is a beautiful new lounge in town, a restaurant as well, of course. And the guy's about to pull the top off and let this smoke come off the old-fashioned. And I said to him, hang on. I said, I got to grab my camera because real talkers are going to want to see this in slow-mo. Nothing like a smoked old-fashioned. So the weekend continues on into Sunday, and, of course, a late-night walk after the rock show. Moses and I, we took a walk around almost all of Lac Beauvert, had the headlamp on, had what we needed to do it safely. The pathways get a little bit icy with the freeze thaw, and so But I'll tell you, in the quiet of the night, my man, in that dark sky preserve that is Jasper, a dog walk at 2 a.m.
Amazing.
I mean, bring your appropriate, I guess what I'm saying is bring bear spray. I don't want anyone to have it on the.
I thought you were going to say something else.
You thought I was going to say bring your joints? Yeah, bring your joints. Yeah,
bring your herbs.
Not going to lie either, obviously. And then, as I tweeted and posted on Instagram, this is how you Sunday. Sunday can be a verb. And when you're looking to Sunday in one of the most beautiful places on planet Earth, I recommend you do it with Eggs Benedict in front of you at the Jasper Park Lodge. An absolutely unbelievable experience at Jasper in January, and you still have time to take it in. They've got from January 20th. Of course, we're talking like right now, my friends. A couple of days from now, this upcoming weekend, the Mountain Malanka. It's going to be Jasper's biggest Ukrainian New Year's party. They've got the Pyramid Winter Fete as well. Sip, snack, and skate on stunning Pyramid Lake. And then they have their street party and fireworks coming up the weekend after that. And Jasper's unbelievable pond hockey tournament, 4-on-4 at Lake Mildred. That's the weekend of January 27th through 29th. You can find all the details at jasper.travel/January. And when you're out there making your Jasper memories, we would love to see them. You can tag us. Use the hashtags MyJasper and Real Talk RJ on Twitter, on Instagram, and you could see them featured on an upcoming episode of MyJasper Memories, presented by Tourism Jasper, right here on Real Talk.
That was one of my favorite episodes right there.
Well, that's the personal stuff. Like I always like to say, like I was telling you, there are so many cool things. Like I could tell you about the Maligne Canyon Ice Walk, which will blow your mind. And we can talk about in the summer things like whitewater rafting on the Athabasca River, or we can talk about the restaurant experiences. We can talk about all that. But I like to say every once in a while, this is how real people talk. When you're going out here, you ask your friend that's been somewhere. You've been to Jasper, or you've been to Chicago, or you've been to Frankfurt. Where did you go? Or where do you go when you visit there?
Of course.
And so I like to say I go to Evil Dave's Grill. I stay at the Fairmont Hotel. I party at the Athabee.
Athabee is great.
Crushed a couple. Oh, I didn't show the one photo. You want to show the photo of the elk meatloaf at Jasper Brewing Company?
That's
one. We our in studio acoustic guitarist has already gone home for the day. But look at this. This is that's a Jasper the Bear Ale in the background there, and then this
3/4 strength
elk meatloaf. I literally cannot leave Jasper without crushing an elk meatloaf at the Jasper Brewing Company.
Not caribou,
not caribou, but elk. Hold the caribou on the meatloaf. There you go. Absolutely amazing time. So this Ivan Provorov thing, it's going to have people talking through the day, and I appreciate the conversations. I'm expecting that we're probably going to get a couple of comments in to talk at ryanjesperson.com for trash talk emails that you can send us coming up on Friday. But it really did, to me, reiterate, and I know that a lot of people were taking a look at my tweet where I said that the Flyers should have sat him, that he shouldn't have played in the game. And a lot of people were sort of appalled. I mean, you even said it. Joey says it as well. He says the comments on your tweet are so gross. There was one guy in particular that said to me, he put his money where his mouth was, and he went online and spent $300 to buy an Ivan Provorov jersey. And I
don't want to be angry today, and I woke up angry looking at these tweets because it's like, it's 2022. How is this still happening that people just don't let people love who they want to love? Yeah. If you're not hurting kids, women, or animals, to me, live your life. Do whatever the heck you want to do, as long as you're not messing with anyone else's life. Yeah. And like I said, this was the absolute bare minimum the guy could have done. And talking about his religion, Russian Orthodox. I told you this morning, I looked up. I just wanted to see a bit about his personal life, not to attack Ivan, but, he lives with his girlfriend, Madison Lee. Go look at her Instagram. It's pretty, I don't want to say provocative, but, I mean, she's doing things on there. Russian Orthodox, I know there's some silly rule the patriarchs in the Orthodox, they don't like short skirts, red lipstick. You're not supposed to wear that kind of stuff. She's wearing that stuff on her Instagram.
Well,
they live together. I'm assuming.
Oh, but they probably don't have sex, Johnny. They'll have sex after they get married.
I'm assuming he's not a virgin. He's living with this girl out of wedlock. So for him,
I'm wondering, did you check to see has he played in the Flyers games that fall on a Sunday? I'm not sure. I
You
can't
know what I
remember because
mean?
I know that obviously he's a very religious, he's a very steadfast,
Yeah.
Bible-believing Russian Orthodox. Of course, I would imagine he's resting on Sundays.
All he had to do was support a cause and be part of the team. And if he didn't, sit out the game. That's all I'm saying. But
Yeah.
I'm sure we're going to hear about this all day. And
Sure. I mean, Sam says, keep in mind that Provorov's religion is the same religion that promotes the war in Ukraine, right? Meantime, Mr. Bad Timing says, isn't the idea that we all have equal rights? Not that we all agree, but we have the choice to disagree and not be punished for that. I mean, sometimes you get a comment that's just so inane that you don't really know where to start. But the idea that we all have equal rights, well, we don't. We don't have equal rights. We don't have equal experiences, which is why people continue to fight for equality. And whether that's marriage equality, whether that's equal access to things like sport or industry or commerce or other opportunities, those fights continue. And then to say, not that we all agree, but we have the choice to disagree. Well, what are you disagreeing with? Because I thought in the previous sentence you said that we all have equal rights. So what are you disagreeing with? If we all have equal rights, Mr. Bad Timing. The only smart thing about this guy is his handle. Bad timing on the comment, bad timing on the take. With Silver Wings says if Provorov's going to use his religion as a shield, reporters should start asking about why other things are okay, like working on the Sabbath. So there you have that from With Silver Wings. And Brian asks me, in good faith, I'm sure, does this mean, Ryan, that you're against freedom of religion? Yeah, for sure, buddy. That's what it means, for sure. He chose to abstain. He didn't call his own press conference, nor did he speak poorly of anyone. But it seems none of the above matters. It's not my religion, but I believe people get the right to choose. To choose what? Exactly. To choose what? Like if it was a night to support Ukraine, if it was a night to support Ukraine and Ivan Provorov, as a Russian, opted out of the warm-up skate, what do you think people would do?
Exactly.
Wouldn't that be fascinating? What if it was a night after a Christian church was targeted by vandals or even worse, shot up? We see stuff like that. Mosques, synagogues, churches targeted by people with hate in their heart. So what if a National Hockey League team was going to honor with a moment of silence the Christian faith or members of a church community? And a player, based on their personal beliefs, opted out of that. Would all of these same people be okay with that? Did all of these people that are supporting Ivan Provorov's right to not participate in the warm-up skate all support Colin Kaepernick kneeling and not participating and standing for the national anthem?
And you can't have it both ways. And you're talking about recent events. We just had a gay nightclub get shot up. Like these people think, well, they have all the same rights as we do. Since when? 2016, the states all finally agreed to have gay marriage. 2005 here in Canada. This is not long ago. That's why we have these nights. And just let me reiterate before we go, before anyone thinks I was shaming his girlfriend for wearing a short skirt and wearing lipstick.
No, it sounded
It's
to me like you were
exactly
telling
not the
everybody
point.
to follow her on Instagram.
Do whatever
That's the
she
vibe
wants.
I got from it.
I was just trying to,
Yeah. Jason says, regardless of your views on the issue, I find it interesting that everybody piles on someone who supports a different view. Get politics out of sport. This isn't politics. He says it's enough in places already. Diversity is important, but shaming people who hold a different view is just as ugly. If it was Black Lives Matter, if it was Orange Shirt Day, instead of what it was, Pride Night, would as many people go on the record in supporting Ivan Provorov? Would you still go on the record and support an athlete who refused to take to the ice in support of Black Lives Matter? In other words, an athlete who took a staunch white supremacist position on an issue, opting out for religious or other reasons? And if not, if we are indeed truly equal, ask yourself why. I know that some of you are going to feel like you have great hot takes on this and that you're going to own me on this, and I invite your emails, and we're happy to keep the conversation going because that's what we do on a show called Real Talk. And we do it with the support of sponsors like Local Environmental Services. In Alberta and Saskatchewan, if you're running a business, whether it's a small clothing store, whether it's an independent restaurant, whether it's a strip mall, a shopping mall, a library, an industrial processing facility, an agricultural operation, Why not keep it local? Save money, have real human beings answer the phone, and get that family-owned service that Local Environmental Services has been providing in the Prairie Provinces for the last quarter century. You can request a quote today on everything from front-load and roll-off bins through to water hauling, recycling, fencing, landfill services out of Edmonton and area, Whitecourt and area, Regina and area. Check them out today at localenvironmental.ca. A couple of things I want you to circle your calendar in the context of Friesen Brothers, Alberta grown, Alberta owned, and helping families through some of these affordability crunches. A couple of things. Number one, they've got their Family Essentials Easy Family Meal Solutions incentive. They take recipes that are built around foods that are relatively inexpensive. Family budgets are forefront as they devise and develop those recipes with their team of Red Seal chefs. You can find those details online. Great recipe ideas, healthy meal options at friesen.com. And number two, don't forget, the next chance to save 15% on your grocery purchases of $75 or more is coming up February 1st, the first of every month, at 16 Friesen Brothers locations across the province. And of course, we're going to tell you about the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. Unbelievable supporters of Real Talk. That's why we're so proud to send you to the Dairy Queens in Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road this entire month. You've got about 2 weeks left to load up your freezer with dilly bars and DQ sandwiches. You buy a box of 6, you get another box of 6 absolutely free. The buy one, get one free promotion through the month of January at the Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park.
Going to be the death of me. My wife literally commented on a post. Somebody was like, I'm looking for a second freezer for my home. Any deals? And my wife commented, I think we're going to need one soon, too. We are like...
She's got her eyes on you, buddy.
We are dilly-barred up right now.
Hey, but like once you have the second freezer, then the sky's the limit.
Then it really opens up.
Yeah, then you can then you can start loading up on Buster bars and treats of pizzas. And I found that the blizzards, you got to enjoy in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like you can if you're gonna have a blizzard, you eat about half of it and then you put it in the freezer.
It's not the same.
Don't put it in the. It's not the same. And then you got to find that sweet spot where you got to leave it out for like 10 minutes.
Oh yeah.
And then you give it a quick stir with that long signature Dairy Queen spoon, and then you can kind of get back the magic. Yeah. But I recommend, my personal recommendation is to crush the blizzards at the moment you buy them.
Yeah.
Like ideally probably just in the parking lot.
And in January, I would recommend adding a scoop of whey protein.
I'm going to pretend like you didn't say that.
Okay, let's get out of here.
Yeah, let's get out. Now I'm rattled. I mean, literally nothing is rattled. Talking Provorov, no problem. My family members texting me while we talk about blowing up supply management, no problem. Food inflation out of control, no problem. Adding whey protein to blizzards, rattled. Coming up on tomorrow's show, and I shouldn't head into this laughing. It's deadly serious. Obviously, it's Canada's other health epidemic. It's the opioid crisis. We're going to talk to an addictions specialist out of the Mayo Clinic in Arizona tomorrow. Dr. Holly Geyer says that she's devised a solution. We're going to dig into it and find out what it is, plus following up on all the stories making news just like you'd expect. Thanks for supporting this Real Talk.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Candola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.